Many of us are familiar with the name and music of the composer Felix Mendelssohn, but how about the life and work of his sister, Fanny? We're really fortunate to speak with Sheila Heyman, a direct descendant of the Mendelssohns and an expert on Fanny's life and music. So when Fanny was sort of 14, her father, Abraham, wrote her a letter saying that Felix was obviously very brilliant, and she was obviously very brilliant, but for her, music could only be an ornament. And he brought back from Paris a manuscript book and some pens for Felix, and he brought back some beads for Fanny to wear around her neck. Well, I can imagine how she reacted to that. But
they are two prodigies who live and breathe it together, and for the first few years they're taught together as well, both dreaming of their future musical careers.
Fanny's musically brilliant and Felix is musically brilliant, but she's 3 years older, and of course as children that means a lot. So she has almost a parental kind of relationship to Felix with music, and it's something that they develop together.
And then at that point, Fanny was told that she had to go and be a housewife and learn how to count napkins, and Felix was given a proper musical grounding, which then became the foundation of his compositional career. Fanny was living in a time when, as a girl, not only were you not allowed to or not able to run and jump and get any kind of physical exercise because you were wearing these ridiculous clothes with tight corsets and gigantic skirts, but you weren't allowed or permitted as a young lady to shout or cry or to get excited or to get cross or to scream or to laugh or to do anything that we would expect as a normal expression, a normal outlet of emotional feeling.
So how's Fanny to express all these complicated emotions? In the early 1800s, her options are limited. There aren't many musical instruments she's allowed to play. Ladies can't put anything between their legs, so no cello or double bass. Anything in their mouths is too suggestive, so no flute or clarinet or any woodwind or brass. Basically, the only thing Fanny's allowed to do is sit demurely at a keyboard. But when Fanny's still in her teens, the keyboard's sound is transformed by the arrival of the first modern pianos. Big beasts with a sturdy metal frame that can express every emotion.
And so this was an opportunity for Fanny to express all those passions, all those physical, all those emotional passions that she wasn't able to release in any other way. And it was an absolute godsend for her. And she absolutely, I think one can say, took full advantage of it in the music that she wrote. So she limited herself for the most part to piano works and songs for piano and voice because she was a pianist and her sister Rebecca was a singer. And so these were works that she had a chance of playing to herself, hearing herself, being able to change them and adjust them as a result of how they sounded.
So this is the Scherzo, which is the third movement of the Easter Sonata. And I particularly like this movement because I think it's also the most difficult movement. I think here Fanny is really showing kind of what she can do on the piano, and she kind of skips around the instrument a lot. And I think to write a piece of music like this with so much light and shade, I think that shows that she was a very multi-dimensional woman and also a fabulous pianist, obviously. But it's very complicated music.
Probably as far as she knew, she was the only person, only woman, that was sitting down and being a composer. You know, that act of writing down, fulfilling this restricted role that was laid out by her society that she could not be. And yet she sat down, she defied, she was brave, she chose. Not only did she do it, but she excelled. It makes me think of like her as this really political figure every time she sits down to write, being an act of defiance or an act of desire.
I think it's almost impossible for us to imagine, but really important to try, what it was like to live in a world before recorded sound. There was no way to hear music unless you were in the room where it was played or to play it yourself. And as a result of this, music was radically different in Paris and Berlin and London and Vienna. All these different places had their own musical styles. So for Fanny, it was a real blow that she couldn't travel to all these places and listen to all these radically different kinds of music that there were. Her solution was, well, she thought, if I can't go to where the music is, then music shall come to me. So she put on this series of very grand concerts in this gigantic ballroom that happened to be part of the family home. And Princes came, and Chopin came, and Liszt came, and Paganini came. She was very rude about all of them. And so she was able to experience music in her own home without actually going out. Famously in 1842, when Felix went to play for Queen Victoria to sing, and he asked her which song of his she wanted to sing, and she chose one that had in fact been written by Fanny, a song called Italian, which was apparently her favourite. And so Felix then had to admit that his sister had actually written this song, and as he put it in a letter, beg her to sing one of mine as well.
This song Italian, it's split into 3 verses. So she's describing her love of Italy and her longing to go there. She's talking about how everything is just richer. So she says the sky is bluer, the grass is greener, the smells are more fragrant. Oranges being really inviting to pick. It's in a waltz time, so you can imagine if you're really excited about something, usually you would dance around the room, and that's how I feel when I sing this song. And the accompaniment is really like a heartbeat, and at the end there's a really long note. She elongates the note because she just wants to have that final outpouring of emotion, and I think that really reads in the final part of the song.
Some of her piano works are incredibly ambitious. Not only did she write her own cadenza for a Beethoven concerto at the age of 17, which is not something that many women even now would do, but she also wrote this extraordinary piece, Das Jahr, when they came back from their wonderful year in Rome, which is a series of 12 piano pieces in related keys going through the months of the year. And it's over an hour of extremely ambitious and complicated and difficult and demanding and beautiful music that absolutely expresses an enormous range of emotions and is challenging to even the best pianists.
And what I think is so remarkable is from the start, you can tell that this is the beginning of a big story. There's something so incredibly romantic and daring about Das Jahr. She doesn't perform Das Jahr for anyone. And I don't know whether she thought it was, too out there, too wild. It's hard to say. So she ends the first movement on a big heroic note and gives you a sense of the kind of virtuosity that's going to come afterwards.
Really, to me, the biggest mystery in the whole story of Fanny's life is the attitude of her brother to her composing. He didn't try and stop her composing altogether, and he said, in fact, that her songs, which was a respectable form for a young lady to compose in, were very good. He said that they were better than anybody else's songs. But he continued throughout their life to resist and refuse and object to her desire to have her name as a published composer. By the mid-1840s, when she was 40 herself, Fanny had been approached by several publishers asking her whether they could publish her work. And so she was very excited about this, and she finally decided that she would make up her mind to defy Felix and to publish. So she wrote to him saying that she was going to do this, and saying that she was as afraid of him at 40 as she had been of her father at 14, which is sort of astounding, really. And she went ahead and published and had one of the happiest years of her life.
Every time she sat down to write, she was doing so in a sort of creative vacuum. The idea of what a composer was exclusively male. A composer was a man who wrote music.
She wanted to be a good wife, a good daughter, a good sister, a good mother. At the same time, there was this fire burning inside her. Intellectual, rigorous, critical, creative. That is what gets me every time with Fanny.